Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Tamara, and we're back. We're back with another book review, and I'm not gonna lie, this book kind of just showed up in my life. Like, it showed up in my algorithms, it showed up amongst some friends that recommended it to me, and I thought it was something new. I did, until I realized it's not new, and then it even confused me more as to why all of a sudden is this book showing up, and that is The Web of Vow and Vengeance. Right away, I did a little bit of research before picking this up, and there is a prequel kind of to this, like a 0.5 to this story. And there's also already the sequel that's out, and then they're releasing a third, I believe, at the end of this year. So again, this book has been very present, and I'm only hearing about it now. And so I don't know what that says about this book, to be honest. It actually made me a little confused. But let's get into talking about this. These are spoiler talk reviews, guys. If you don't care to be spoiled, then step aside, read the book, and then come back. Or if you don't, well, if you just don't care for spoilers and you're ready to stick around, or you've read it, then let's just stick around. You've been warned. All right, before I can even touch on the contents of this book, I do have a little bit of a gripe with it physically, because we know that Tamara likes to collect very pretty books, and also just like hardcover books if I can. So I ordered this in hardcover, and I just feel like the attempt at sprayed edges here is really disappointing. One, because it's inconsistent. It's only on the spine here and not on the bum and the face of it. And not only that, the sprayed edges isn't really sprayed edges. It's literally like a digital print. And if you kind of in person, if you were to look at it, you can see the smudged digital ink that they pretty much almost like mass copied this when they made these copies. Like, it doesn't have that like really fine-tuned personalized touch, even though none of these books are personalized, but these are a lot more crisp finishes than this one. So it just kind of felt cheap. That's the first thing. As soon as I picked it up, I'm like, they commit to sprayed edges or you don't. So I would have rather this not be here, to be honest, because it just gave me a cheapness to it. And sorry if I'm being nitpicky, but it really irked me when I bought it. I was like, why did they even try? Why? But anyways, now let's get into the contents of this book. I literally just finished this book probably 5 minutes ago. So I probably should have sat with my thoughts a little bit more before starting this video, but I didn't think I actually have that much to say about it. So I figured that it would just be clear as day when we start and it'll just come to me. However, the ending of this book was really lackluster to me, and it is really making my rating difficult because I truly thought this was a 4 out of 5, pretty much consistently through until the end. So I'm trying to weigh how much the ending has bothered me for my rating. So I think I'm going to hold off on giving my rating to see if it stays at a 4 or if it's maybe dropping to a 3 based on how we talk about this book. Okay? It's going to have to go with that because you guys are my first real elaboration to this book. I haven't thought about it myself. I literally just finished reading it. So maybe you guys will help me clarify my thoughts on it. But all right, so the first thing I have to say is the only thing I knew about this book is it has games and trials, and that is correct. There are 5, I believe, trials in this, and I feel like they were interesting. They were done pretty well. I was concerned because the first trial didn't start till almost halfway through this book, and this book isn't crazy big. So I was really concerned that if they're only starting the trials at around halfway, then they're going to speed through that many trials because there's not that much book left to make it kind of paced in a way that makes sense. But shockingly, it was paced well. I was surprised. And they gave each trial very like simplistic instructions, a lot of, action in a sense. And then they broke it up with pretty much more story in between the trials. And again, it just didn't feel rushed. That was a pleasant surprise for me, especially because also after every trial, there's a ball. So like there's a ball to celebrate those who survived the trials, along with some other royals and family that are in attendance to these things. So they add a social aspect that really kind of not only moves along the story in forms of politics, but also in the romance area too. Like that's kind of where things start brewing between, let's say, our FMC and MMC and some other side characters. So I found that it was really playful how they balanced out the seriousness of the trials, the loss of the trials, and then also they had these like quirky balls they had to get dressed up for after every trial. So I did like the balance there, and like I said, I wasn't rushed, so that was a pleasant surprise. The first half of this book really did set the stage for the world. You met a lot of characters at the beginning. I feel like as our FMC Rose is entering into these trials, you meet a lot of not only people in her immediate life, but new people you meet as the trials begin, and the contenders for the trials and those kind of things. So you meet a lot of people, and I will say that this book does a really good job of making you feel an attachment to a kind of like a newfound family mentality pretty early on. Like there was a moment where I genuinely was like, holy shit, like I feel like one of these good guys is going to have to die, and I don't want them to die, but I think I might cry, because they really did make me love some of these characters that our FMC found herself really forming a bond and a group with. I loved so many of them, and some of the teachers too. Like there was this one instructor, and it turns out that the two main characters that you grow the biggest fondness for do die in this. So there is an impactful pull on both fronts when two major, now I wouldn't say it called them major characters, but they had a pull to the story on multiple fronts, like not just to like our main characters, but they were a huge influence, and their deaths hit and they were impactful, and I appreciated that storytelling. I did not cry. And the shocking thing is one of the earlier characters, Jonas, I thought for sure that if this character dies, it would hit home and I would cry. Only for the story to progress later on that Jonas became a little bit of an undesirable character to me, which kind of bugged me, because at the beginning, this character is like, our FMC got removed from like the royal world because of a lie that her mother ended up essentially killing the queen and the queen's newfound baby, because she died in delivery, and because this Rose's mother couldn't heal her, she kind of had to save one or the other, and the queen said, save my child. The queen ended up dying, and they blamed Rose's mom. So in that sense, they were kind of banished, loss of title. They have magic, they were stripped of their magic, and they were punished for thinking that Rose's mother was the one who killed the queen. So they called her like queen killer. And so indirectly, they're punished for this lie, when meanwhile, that was not the case. The queen had asked for Rose's mom to save the son, or like the child, which ended up dying anyway. So it was a really like brutal circumstance. But anyways, there was a childhood friend that was like a real childhood friend. They get reconnected in these trials, and he makes it a point to be there for her, to help her. And you can tell that like they become really close in friendship, but there could also be something brewing there because they're attracted to each other. And they start that off really playfully until she meets and really gets a fondness for our actual MMC Cure. But at the end of the day, I actually thought, because Jonas does so much for her in this, specifically in the first half, that even if she wasn't interested in him romantically, I was hoping he'd be bigger than that. Like he'd still be that playful golden retriever, loyal friend. And that's kind of what I assumed his character would still be. And if that means like if he were to die, I would feel it, because that kind of like loyalty is like next level, and I was really feeling it in the first half, only for his character to get petty in the second half, and he was not all that great of a friend, let's just say, later on in the book. There's also a lot of mystery around Jonas. Like there's like some weirdness that everyone's picking up on. Like one of her friends, Benny, was like, keep saying like he's like there's something off about him, he's not telling you something. A couple other side characters had referenced that like Jonas is deceiving you. Even like their god ended up at the end also letting her know that Jonas is deceiving you, but they don't actually say what Jonas is deceiving her of. Still, throughout this entire book, we still leave with this question mark, which is a little bit annoying, because they didn't even like try to allude to it. He tries to tell her something at the end of the book, but she doesn't give him the time of day to hear it. So now we're kind of stuck with the question mark on Jonas yet again. But I kind of trailed off a little bit. Jonas was a character I thought I would really like, and then I ended up getting disappointed by the end, and I'm still questioning what the whole secrecy is about Jonas still. So I don't know if I'm interested enough in the second book to know that, because he, like I said, he kind of annoyed me. So he's not one of those characters I'm that into now, but I was at the beginning. I really was. At the end of the day, this book, they had an enemies to lovers trope, and we know how I feel about enemies to lovers. Do I feel that this was a true enemies to lovers? Partially, no. I do think that There was reason for it to be enemies to lovers. Like, obviously, the MMC is actually the one who lied and kind of destroyed her FMC's life with this lie, with the banishment, with her parents dying. It was kind of like indirectly because of this lie, hardship became her life. And I get why she would hate him. I do. Him, on the other hand, I don't like. He was a kid mourning his mother who just never came back after trying to give birth to his brother. So I feel like his innocence as a child, just being like mourning his mother, he could say anything. He probably, like in my perception, also just didn't quite recall feeling any kind of way towards her. Even back then, he was just in loss. So like, he, to me, I didn't fully feel the hate there. Like, yes, there were comments made about hating her, but I didn't really feel it. So to me, it wasn't true enemies in that way, because they both really didn't equally hate each other. But that's just me being particular, because enemies to lovers is my favorite trope. So I did appreciate their relationship, though. I thought it was really like slow burn, which, again, I love me some slow burns. I feel like I have to earn it, and they really played this one out in a good pace. They really kind of left the mystery of them at the beginning. When the trials actually started, probably by like the second or third trial, you really start to like feel the chemistry with them. And then their intimacy scenes and vulnerability really like slow burned its way. Like, by the time they actually had sex, they tried to be intimate on a number of occasions, but something always stood in their way. Like, another trial started, or like someone was hurt or something, and they immediately sprung to action. So they really like bled out a little bit their intimacy, which I didn't mind, because again, I felt like their final like opening up to each other and like being fully with each other was like a pretty satisfying scene. I enjoyed their relationship. I did. I can't. At the end of this book, they really allude to the idea of the MMC deceiving her and duping her and just thinking he's gonna like leave her high and dry, like he did another girl that he got pregnant, although he denies this. His character, to me, I still don't know like what he wanted, but so he was one of the contenders for these games, and when you win said games, you get a gifting from the goddess. And so everyone has their own reason. There's only one winner, but everyone has their own reason to be in these games, and he put himself in these games. Now, what he wanted at the end, we still don't know. So I have doubt in him, yes, but I do think he actually loves her, and I feel like they're really trying to make it seem like he's manipulating her by the end of this, but it just doesn't make sense really as to why, unless his like father really has him under his thumb and can't make his own choices because of like something he physically can't control, like the MMC. And that's something I hope they get into in the next book, because I really do like the MMC, and I don't think he's a deceptive person. They make it very clear that he has very minimal people in his corner and he doesn't trust very easily. And I really like, in a sense, can relate and also appreciate a character like that. And the people he does let in, he's like so soft with, that it was really nice to see the balance, because he's fierce and there's kind of like all this reference that there's nothing he can't do, right? So I feel like the softness to him, you got to see it a lot, and then you also got to see the fierceness. Like his one teacher who both him and FMC develop an appreciation for, he ends up dying, but that teacher was more the father figure to him than his own father was, the king. And this character I should have mentioned is also the prince, so like the king's son. And it just was really heartbreaking when that teacher died, because it did something to the FMC and MMC, and it was like really a kind of where the intimacy started to really trickle, I feel like, is through that vulnerability and that emotionalness, and I really enjoyed it. And plus, he has a direwolf, so that's also something. They reference direwolves in here, but they're definitely not a focal point. There's something that they're referenced as bonded. You know, you can bond with a direwolf. It's almost like a rumor that people don't ride them, though. They're just kind of like another defense, and they guard the kingdom. But he rides his direwolf, and that seems to be a unique thing because their bond is so strong. And we get to see this direwolf briefly in this book to show his soft side and his connections. But then there was also a scene in this where in one of the trials, she talks to a direwolf, meaning Rose, in one of the trials, saying she doesn't want to hurt it, and it's an unbonded direwolf, they said. So I actually thought maybe she's going to bond with the wolf. just because also she alluded that if her life wasn't stripped away from her like it was due to this lie, then she would have kind of enlisted to be a fighter and hopefully bonded a wolf and become a guard to the city. So that's what her dream was beforehand. So they referenced the wolf specifically. So I was kind of hopeful that she would also bond with a wolf, but that didn't really happen. The wolves weren't really that much of a focal point in this, but I did find them interesting. So I do hope they bring more reference to them later on, and maybe there aren't that many people that are bonded to wolves, who knows. But I did really enjoy the idea of the wolf element. It added an extra level of fantasy that I liked. Like, I liked the wolf stuff in the Direbound books. So I was kind of happy when they introduced them back in this, and I was like, oh, that's kind of nice. It like really ties in more fantasy. Another thing that I can't let go of, because I just it bugs me so much. When she enters these trials, she has very minimal things to help her in these said games. But one of her trusted priestesses, like a confidant that like raised her mother, gave her this unique dagger. And we learn throughout the book that this dagger is one of 3. And it also has very unique abilities that are not necessarily reliable, because there's no text that can provide her with the knowledge as to what would happen if she uses the dagger. So she proceeds throughout the entire book to not use the said dagger. And I feel like there were on and off times when she's trying to research it, but then comes up dry and just lets it go. And I found the dagger stuff very interesting, and it really bugged me that this storyline kind of went high and dry. At the end of the book, she does use the dagger to kill the final contender to win the trials, but nothing really again was acknowledged about the dagger's power and whatnot. Like, I feel like they hyped up this dagger's relevance only for it not to really been given the significance when she finally used it at the end, which I feel like is a real big bummer, because I really enjoyed the mystery of this dagger, and they kind of just let it turn to dust storyline wise in this. That bugged me, because I was like, that dagger seemed really cool and very unique, and now we're just like not using it. We're just using like dinky little daggers to get by, finally use it, and there's no real reference to it. Instead, they reference some secret magic she uncovers throughout the trials that's a little bit forbidden. Why it's forbidden is still a mystery to me as well, because they allude to kind of rebels being associated to this ice magic and water wielders not being a thing anymore in their history. But again, I feel like maybe I missed it if it was referenced as to why they're not a thing and why it's so frowned upon to have this magic. Maybe I missed it, because to me, I was like, I don't understand this reference. I don't understand why she's like so dangerous all of a sudden because of this magic that she all of a sudden came across. And then she had to give up her magic at the end, and her wish was to get her original magic back, because that was stripped from her with that lie. And so she won and she got this back. So now I don't even know if she has that new magic in addition to her original magic that was returned to her. Like, was that a wasted storyline? Probably not. Like, she probably does have that magic still brewing in her, I would think. But I don't know. Okay, so sorry, I have to reference some of the characters that did die. Like, her best friend, who was, she was, I'm not even going to try and pronounce her name, but she only has this one key female best friend who, like, dressed her up all the time for these balls, and they had such an innocent relationship, and that best friend had a relationship already in the story, and so they were just so sweet, and I absolutely loved their relationship. And she ends up getting poisoned drinking out of Rose's cup, so it was intended for Rose, but she ends up dying instead. And it's one of those like sad realizations that I was like, that really sucks, because I really liked that character, and I wanted, if I was going to continue reading these books, I was curious about their relationship more so, because it was just so fun and wholesome, and now she's gone, so I was a little bummed. And then the teacher, the one that they bond with, also was a hit from home, because he was just so great. So anyways, the ending of this book, she ends up winning said trials. She has a like, she does, the whole purpose of this is to give her sister a better life. She gets everything back that she lost before, including all of the opportunity for her sister. But the sister ends up kind of spitting on this a little bit by the end. Like, she gets pregnant out of wedlock, so that's something that instantly they can get banished for again. And then she ends up, to fix the problem, marrying the father of Jonas, who's been kind of like protecting the sister Kay during said trials, so she could at least be involved to make sure that she knows Rose is alive during these trials, just as a goodwill gesture. Rose asks this favor at the beginning of the book to kind of keep her close and near, because they were in the slums, which is not close to where like the high keep is, where all this trial stuff is happening. And then she ends up finding the solution to marry Arthur, so Jonas's father, as a way to mask this said pregnancy. And then they end up having quite a spat over it, and it just doesn't seem like Kay appreciates anything Rose has done, and Rose obviously wants better for her sister, rightfully so. Like, I side with Rose in a lot of this when I was listening to the argument, but the story kind of ended with this argument, and then also with Rose having some like suspicion about her and Kyor's relationship because of a prior experience of Kyor's, like a prior relationship, and then the king pretty much putting Kyor under his wing again, the MMC, and walking off, you know, not giving Rose the clearing of her name that she wanted, so the whole purpose of why everything happened and like why all of her loss happened was because of Kyor's lie. And he notably acknowledged that to Rose, that he wants to make up for it and he was in the wrong. But she was hoping he would like claim this truth in front of his father. But the whole reason he didn't was because he couldn't lose his position and all of these things. He couldn't be banished, be treason, killed. Like, there's a lot riding on him clearing up that lie at this given stage and lying to the king. And there was a lot of threats associated even back then when he was a boy. So her expecting that from him now kind of blew my mind a little bit, because the teacher, the one that they were really close to, openly said to her that like, you have to think about it from his perspective. He was a child and he can't lie to it. Like, what did you think would happen if he told the king the truth? It would have been worse. So her trying to get him to face the truth yet again in front of the king just felt like a wasted plot point to me, because I thought she understood why and they weren't going to bring that up again. And so now, because he didn't stand up for the truth, she has like bitterness in her mouth in addition to suspicions about their relationship. And that is truly how the book ended. So I was kind of like, that was very lackluster. And if that's meant to be some sense of like a cliffhanger for the next, I don't know if I'll read the next, because it really made me underwhelmed. But I did like the story a lot up until that. So I think I have to give this book a 3.5. We're going 3.5 because it is better than a 3 and it is less than a 4. So 3.5 for me. Let me know what you guys think of this book, guys. Honestly, I'm curious. I don't know if I'm going to read the next one. If you think I should and you guys have read it, let me know if it's worth it. Because, I don't know, when books end kind of lackluster to me, I don't really have the most drive to read the next one. And especially if I don't even have a character I'm really, like, desperate to reveal mystery behind. Not that desperate for any of them, but I did like a lot of these characters. It just, they didn't have that kind of pull at the end. They didn't have enough of a mystery or cliffhanger for me to be interested in reading the second one. But let me know, please. I'm curious. I really am. Until next time, guys.